The air smelled of burning metal and blood. Explosions shook the ground as warships rained fire from the sky. The battlefield was filled with fallen warriors, their armor cracked, their weapons shattered. Commander Xylura stood in the middle of the destruction, her body covered in deep cuts and bruises. Her twin energy blades flickered in her hands, their power weakening. She had fought for hours, but her forces were gone. Betrayed. Left to die. She breathed heavily, her silver-blue skin smeared with dirt and blood. Her enemies surrounded her, their weapons aimed at her heart. The leader of the enemy warriors, a massive alien with red eyes and spiked armor, stepped forward. "Commander Xylura," he growled, "your reign ends today." Xylura tightened her grip on her weapons. She refused to surrender. Even if she died here, she would die fighting. But before the enemy could strike, a sudden explosion sent dust and fire into the air. A small human figure appeared from the smoke, running toward the battlefield. Nathan Carter didn't belong here. He wasn't a soldier. He was just a scavenger, searching for valuable alien technology to sell. He had landed his small ship far from the battle, hoping to avoid trouble. But then he saw her, the alien warrior woman, bleeding, standing alone against an entire squad of enemies. He didn't know why, but something in him refused to walk away. Maybe it was because he had seen too many people abandoned in war. Maybe it was because he respected fighters who never gave up. Either way, he knew one thing: he wasn't going to let her die. Nathan grabbed an explosive charge from his belt and threw it toward the enemy soldiers. The blast sent them scattering. Using the distraction, he ran toward Xylura. She turned her head, shocked to see a human running straight toward her. "What are you doing, fool? Run," she shouted, her voice full of rage. Nathan ignored her. He grabbed her arm. "No time to argue. Come on." Xylura tried to resist, but her legs were weak. Her body was shutting down. She had lost too much blood. Before she could collapse, Nathan threw her arm over his shoulder and dragged her toward cover. Blaster fire whizzed past them. The enemy warriors realized what was happening and began chasing them. Nathan ran as fast as he could, his heart pounding. Xylura was heavy, her armor making it worse. But he gritted his teeth and pushed forward. They reached a destroyed vehicle and ducked behind it. Nathan pulled out a small device and activated a smoke shield, hiding them from the enemy's view. Xylura looked at him, still trying to understand why a human had just risked his life for her. Nathan smirked. "Well, you owe me one, warrior lady." Xylura, exhausted but impressed, gave a small nod. For the first time in her life, she didn't know what to say. Smoke covered the battlefield as Nathan and Xylura hid behind the wrecked vehicle. The sound of enemy footsteps echoed in the distance. They were searching for her. Xylura tried to stand, but her body refused to move. Pain shot through her legs, and she collapsed back against the cold metal. She hated this feeling. Weakness, helplessness. She was a warrior, a commander, a leader of her people. And now she was being dragged around by a human scavenger. Nathan crouched beside her, his breathing heavy. He peeked over the wreckage, checking if the enemy was getting closer. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed sharp. He had survived worse. Xylura glared at him. "Why did you save me?" Her voice was filled with anger and confusion. Nathan wiped the sweat from his forehead. "You were about to die. Figured you'd prefer another chance." Xylura scoffed. "A true warrior does not run from battle. I would have died with honor." Nathan rolled his eyes. "Yeah, and what good is honor if you're dead?" Xylura gritted her teeth. She wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't understand. But she was too tired. Her wounds were deep, and she had lost a lot of blood. Nathan noticed her struggling. "You're bleeding bad," he muttered. He reached into his small backpack and pulled out a human medkit. Xylura's eyes narrowed. "That won't work on me." Nathan ignored her. "Well, we don't have time to find alien medicine, so this will have to do." He tore open a bandage and pressed it against her wound. Scylla hissed in pain. "You dare touch me, human." Nathan smirked. "Yeah, well, you're not in a position to complain." Scylla wanted to rip his hand away, but she had to admit, the human's medicine worked fast. The pain in her side dulled, and she could feel her strength slowly returning. Nathan finished patching her up and leaned back. "There, good as new." She looked at him carefully. He was different from the human she had fought in the past. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't afraid of her. And he didn't care about honor or glory. He just helped because he wanted to. Scylla took a deep breath. "You are foolish, human. My enemies will not stop hunting me. You should leave before they find us." Nathan crossed his arms. "Yeah, that's not happening." She frowned. "Why?" Nathan grinned. "Because I don't leave people behind." Scylla stared at him, stunned. No one had ever said those words to her before. She had always been expected to fight alone, to die alone. The sound of footsteps grew closer. The enemy was near. Nathan helped Scylla to her feet. "Come on, warrior lady. We need to move." For the first time in her life, Commander Scylla let someone else lead. Nathan and Scylla moved through the ruins, keeping low. The enemy was close, too close. Every few seconds, distant voices echoed through the destroyed battlefield. "They're searching for you," Nathan whispered. Scylla's sharp eyes scanned the area. "They will not stop until I am dead." Nathan sighed. "Great, just what I needed." Despite her wounds, Scylla forced herself to walk. The human's medical treatment had helped, but she was still weak. Her pride burned inside her. A warrior should not need saving. A commander should not be running. Yet, here she was, following a human scavenger like some helpless recruit. Nathan led her through a broken trench, avoiding the enemy's line of sight. His mind worked fast. He had no weapons strong enough to fight these aliens directly. If they were caught, they were dead. He turned to Scylla. "How many are after you?" She hesitated. "At least a dozen, maybe more." Nathan whistled. "That's bad." Scylla gave him a sharp look. "You should leave, human. This is not your fight." Nathan smirked. "Yeah, you said that already. And I'm still here." Scylla clenched her fists. "You are foolish." Nathan grinned. "You're welcome." She opened her mouth to argue, but a loud crack cut her off. A plasma bolt struck the ground inches from Nathan's foot. "They found us." Scylla growled. Nathan grabbed her wrist. "Run." They sprinted through the wreckage as enemy warriors fired at them. Scylla's body ached with every step, but she pushed forward. Nathan, despite being just a human, moved fast. He led her into a narrow passage between broken walls. Bullets and energy blasts exploded behind them. Scylla's breath was heavy. "We won't outrun them forever." Nathan ducked behind a collapsed building. His mind raced. He couldn't fight them head-on, but maybe he didn't have to. He spotted something. A fuel cell from a wrecked vehicle. It was cracked, leaking gas. Nathan grinned. "Perfect." He turned to Scylla. "Can you still fight?" She lifted her energy blade. "Always." Nathan pointed at the approaching enemies. "We need to lure them here." Scylla frowned but trusted him. Without a word, she stepped into the open and let out a warrior's roar. The enemy soldiers locked onto her and charged. Nathan waited. Closer, closer. Then he fired his blaster at the fuel cell. Boom! The explosion shook the ground, sending enemy soldiers flying. The rest stumbled, caught off guard. Scylla didn't waste the chance. With a fierce battle cry, she leaped into action, cutting down the stunned enemies with deadly precision. Nathan watched, impressed. "Remind me never to make you mad." When the last enemy fell, Scylla turned to him. "You fight with cunning, not strength. I see now why humans survive." Nathan shrugged. "We do our best." But deep inside, he knew this wasn't over. More enemies would come, and next time, they might not be so easy to trick. The battlefield was quiet again, but Nathan knew it wouldn't last. Smoke and dust hung in the air, covering the wreckage of their latest fight. Scifi stood over the fallen enemies, her energy blade still humming. Nathan wiped sweat from his forehead. "Well, that was fun," he muttered sarcastically. Scifi turned to him, breathing heavily. "We must move. More will come." Nathan nodded, but he noticed something. Scifi was struggling. Her stance was unsteady, her breathing ragged. The fight had drained her. "You're not okay," he said. Scifi straightened, her pride refusing to show weakness. "I will survive." Nathan wasn't convinced. He had seen exhaustion before, on soldiers, refugees, and himself. Scifi was reaching her limit. "We need to find cover," he insisted. She shook her head. "No, we fight." Nathan sighed. Why were aliens always so stubborn? "Fight. You can barely stand." Scifi took a step forward, but her legs gave out. Nathan lunged and caught her before she hit the ground. Her weight pressed against him, her armor still warm from battle. She gritted her teeth, but the pain in her body betrayed her. She hated this, hated needing help. Nathan gently lowered her to a sitting position behind some debris. "Okay, warrior lady, we're taking a break." Scifi clenched her fists. "I do not need." Nathan held up a hand. Yeah. I don't need help. I'd rather die fighting." "I get it. But guess what? I'm not letting you die." For a moment, she said nothing. Nathan opened his backpack and took out more medical supplies. He carefully checked her wounds. One on her side was still bleeding. He pressed a bandage against it. Scifi flinched but didn't resist. As he worked, she suddenly whispered, "Keep me alive." Nathan froze. He looked up. Her golden eyes, once filled with fire, now held something different. Fear. This wasn't the proud warrior who wanted to die in battle. This was someone who wanted to live. "You're really asking me?" Nathan asked, surprised. Scifi nodded. "I cannot die here. Not like this." Nathan smirked. "Guess you're finally starting to like me." She frowned. "Do not test me, human." Nathan chuckled but softened. "I got you, Scifi. I'll keep you alive." For the first time, she trusted him. Nathan finished patching her up. He pulled out a small energy bar from his pocket and handed it to her. Scifi hesitated, then took it. Nathan leaned against the debris, keeping watch. The enemy would return soon. But now, something had changed. Scifi wasn't just a warrior anymore. She was a survivor. And Nathan. He was her only hope. Nathan and Scifi sat in the shadows, hidden behind the wreckage. The battlefield was silent for now, but they both knew it wouldn't last. The enemy would return, stronger, angrier. Nathan glanced at Scifi. Her breathing was slow, controlled, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She had fought longer than any warrior should. She was running on pure willpower. "You sure you can still fight?" he asked. Scifi scoffed. "A warrior does not ask such things." Nathan smirked. "Right. My mistake." Before she could reply, distant footsteps echoed in the ruins. The enemy was coming. Fast. Nathan peeked through a gap in the wreckage. There were too many. A full squad, maybe more. He and Scifi were completely outnumbered. He took a deep breath. "Think, Carter. Think." Scifi gripped her weapon. "We fight." Nathan shook his head. "No, we survive." She frowned. There is no escape. Nathan's mind raced. They couldn't run. They couldn't fight them all head-on. But maybe they didn't have to. His eyes landed on a broken alien power core, unstable, cracked, and glowing faintly. If he could overload it. Boom. Instant destruction. He grinned. "Okay, warrior lady, I have an idea. But you need to trust me." Scifi's eyes narrowed. "I do not like this." Nathan ignored her. He pulled a small energy cell from his pocket and tossed it toward the power core. "Get ready," he whispered. The enemy appeared over the ruins, weapons aimed. "There they are. Kill them." Nathan fired his blaster at the energy cell. The explosion was instant. A shockwave tore through the battlefield, sending metal and dust into the air. The force knocked several enemy soldiers off their feet. Nathan grabbed Silara's arm. Now, they rushed forward. Silara, despite her wounds, moved like lightning. Her energy blade sliced through enemies as Nathan fired with deadly precision. The enemy, caught in the chaos, struggled to react. They never expected a human to fight like this. One warrior lunged at Silara. She dodged and took him down with a single strike. Another aimed at Nathan. He rolled behind cover and fired a perfect headshot. The battlefield became a blur of movement and fire. They fought together, side by side, human and alien, warrior and survivor. When the dust settled, the enemy lay scattered. The ones still alive ran. Nathan exhaled. "We did it." Silara stood beside him, her blade dripping with energy. She looked at him, eyes filled with something new. Respect. "You are not just a scavenger, human," she said. "You are a warrior." Nathan smirked. "Took you long enough to figure that out." She gave a rare, small smile. But their battle wasn't over yet. More enemies would come. And this time, they needed a real plan. Nathan and Silara stood among the wreckage, their breaths heavy. The enemy was gone. For now. But Nathan knew it wouldn't last. More would come. Silara wiped her energy blade clean and looked at Nathan. There was something different in her eyes. Before, she saw him as nothing more than a scavenger, a fool who didn't understand war. Now she saw something else. A fighter, a survivor, a man who refused to give up. "You fight well, human," she admitted. "Clever, unpredictable." Nathan smirked. "And you. Not bad for someone who nearly passed out an hour ago." Silara's eyes narrowed. "Watch your words." Nathan chuckled. Even after everything, she was still stubborn. But he could see the truth. She was tired. She had spent her whole life fighting for her people, for honor, for survival. And now, she was alone. Nathan pulled out a small energy bar from his pocket and tossed it to her. "Eat." Silara caught it, confused. "I do not need." "Just eat, warrior lady." She sighed and took a bite. To her surprise, it wasn't bad. Nathan sat on a broken piece of metal and looked at the sky. "So, what's next? You going back to your people?" Silara didn't answer right away. She stared at the battlefield, at the bodies of those who betrayed her. Could she really go back? She clenched her fists. "No, they abandoned me. I was nothing to them." Nathan nodded. He understood that feeling. "Then what do you want to do?" Silara hesitated. No one had ever asked her that. What did she want? For so long, she had been told where to fight, who to kill, when to die. But now, she had a choice. She looked at Nathan. He was different from her people. Humans fought for survival, not just honor. He could have left her behind, but he didn't. He chose to save her. And now, she would make her own choice. She stood tall, her strength returning. "I will not go back. I will fight for myself." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "And what does that mean?" Silara knelt before him, one fist over her chest, a warrior's oath. "I owe you my life, human. I fight beside you now." Nathan blinked. "Wait. What?" Silara smirked. "You saved me. Now, I save you." Nathan scratched his head. "I wasn't really looking for a battle partner, but I guess I could use some help." She nodded. "Then it is decided." Nathan sighed. What had he just gotten himself into? But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. Nathan stared at Silara as she knelt before him, her fist over her chest in a warrior's oath. I fight beside you now, she had said. He rubbed the back of his neck. So, you're serious about this? Silara stood, her golden eyes fierce. A warrior does not make empty promises. Nathan let out a slow breath. This was crazy. He was just a scavenger, a survivor who got lucky. And now he had an alien warrior woman swearing loyalty to him. Life was getting weird. He smirked. Well, I won't lie. Having a badass fighter on my side doesn't sound too bad. Silara smirked back. You are finally learning. Nathan chuckled, but his smile faded when he heard a distant rumbling. He turned and saw something that made his stomach drop. Enemy warships approaching. They are coming, Silara muttered. Nathan's mind raced. They couldn't fight off an entire fleet. They needed a way out. He scanned the battlefield, searching for something, anything that could help. Then he saw it, a damaged enemy dropship. Bingo. He pointed. Think you can pilot that thing? Silara glanced at the ship and nodded. I can, if it still works. Nathan grinned. Then let's go steal ourselves a ride. The escape. The two sprinted toward the dropship, dodging wreckage and debris. Nathan climbed into the cockpit while Silara checked the controls. She pressed a few buttons. The ship hummed to life. Nathan pumped his fist. Yes, we're in business. But before they could take off, enemy soldiers appeared, weapons raised. Silara, we got company. Silara growled and grabbed her energy blade. Buy me time. Nathan grabbed a blaster and fired. He wasn't a soldier, but he knew how to shoot. He took cover behind the cockpit, returning fire while Silara worked. The ship shook as more enemy reinforcements arrived. We don't have time for this, Nathan shouted. Silara slammed her fist against the controls. The engines roared to life. She grabbed the flight stick. Hold on, human. The dropship lifted off just as enemy blasts struck the ground below. Nathan barely had time to strap in before they shot into the sky. Enemy warships pursued them, but Silara's piloting skills were unmatched. She weaved through the wreckage, dodging laser fire with impossible precision. Nathan gripped the seat. Remind me never to question your flying skills. Silara smirked. Good. Now shut up and let me fly. After a few tense minutes, they finally broke free of the battlefield. The enemy was behind them. They had escaped. A new beginning. As the stars stretched before them, Nathan exhaled. So, what now? Silara looked at him, her expression calm but determined. Now, we carve our own path. Nathan grinned. I like the sound of that. And so, the warrior and the scavenger flew into the unknown, together. The beginning of something greater.